In January 2024, a vessel whose length exceeds the height of the Eiffel Tower departed from Miami. On its board were almost 10,000 people, more than the population of some Caribbean islands. Each of them was set to spend a week among technologies so complex and imperceptible that the majority of passengers will not even know of their existence. Behind the water slides, pools, and 20 decks of recreation works a crew of 2,000 people, managing a system that is more reminiscent of a nuclear submarine than a cruise liner. This is a floating city, with its own electrical grid, its own water supply system, a hospital, and a waste processing system that operates cleaner than is permitted in many countries on land. Before you is the icon of the seas. Its cost amounts to $2 billion, and its displacement reaches 250,800 gross tons. Almost every system on board was created in such a way as to perform several tasks at once. Everything begins with a 52-foot structure, past which thousands of passengers walk daily, not even suspecting that it is exactly what holds the load of several decks above their heads. For 25 years, the promenade galleries on Royal Caribbean liners resembled enclosed shopping malls, dark, without windows and natural light. When the creators of the icon decided for the first time to install panoramic glass walls from floor to ceiling, they faced a serious problem. The steel beams supporting the cabins in the Central Park on the 8th deck passed right through this space. It was impossible to remove the beams, otherwise the upper decks would have lost their support. Leaving them meant preserving the old dark layout. Then the engineers concentrated the entire load into one huge steel sphere and turned it into a kinetic art installation. The structure under the name Pearl holds the weight of 3 decks and simultaneously allows sunlight to freely penetrate inside. One solution eliminated 2 problems at once. But Pearl solves only one task. The rest of the ship has a much more serious challenge. 7,600 people who want to use one vessel simultaneously. If such a crowd is simply gathered in one space, huge lines at restaurants, overcrowded pools, and promenade areas resembling a subway at rush hour will appear. To avoid this, the creators divided the ship into 8 neighborhoods. Each of them operates as an independent space with its own entertainment, restaurants, and recreation areas. In Chill Island are located 4 out of 7 pools and a bar right in the water, which is filled with guests almost the entire day. In Thrill Island are found a water park, the Flow Rider surfing simulator, and a zip line at a height of 154 feet above the ocean. The Surfside neighborhood is created for families with children and includes a carousel, a water playground, arcade machines, and its own cafe. Hideaway is intended exclusively for adults. Here are located an infinity pool, jacuzzis, and a bar with a disc jockey. As a result, a passenger relaxing in Chill Island might, over the entire week, never encounter a family that is spending time in Thrill Island. One ship turns into several different worlds. Passengers of the spring cruises, with more than 7,300 guests on board, noted that the decks remained spacious. The restaurants did not look overcrowded, and there were always free spots near the pools. The neighborhoods turned out to be such an effective solution that another problem arose. The upper decks were too windy for recreation and too exposed for restaurants. The space needed to be filled with something. Thus appeared 6 water slides on the upper deck, including the tallest freefall slide and the first open slide of such a type built at sea. One of them begins from a platform under which the floor suddenly disappears after a countdown. 17,000 square feet of attractions occupied a space that was previously practically useless and simultaneously distracted thousands of passengers from the pools, restaurants, and bars on the lower decks. But glass walls, pools, jacuzzis, and more than 40 kitchens require a huge amount of energy. At the same time, the icon of the seas is not connected to anything. 14 decks below the water slides are located 6 engines the size of a 2-story house. They are exactly what provides the operation of the heating for the pools, the elevators, the lighting, the kitchens, and the air conditioning system on all 20 decks of the ship. The generators on board alone produce 46 megawatts of electrical energy. The propulsion system adds another 84 megawatts. This is enough for a small city, which at the same time is moving across the Caribbean Sea at a speed of 22 knots. To provide such power for weeks far from the shore, the ship is equipped with 6 huge engines. 3 Wärtsilä engines have 14 cylinders each, weigh 245 tons each, and reach 40 feet in length. Another 3 are slightly smaller, 203 tons and 34 feet long. Each of them is heavier than a blue whale and longer than a school bus. While these machines continuously work in the depths of the hull, passengers on the upper decks choose between sushi and Italian cuisine, not even suspecting what is happening far beneath them. But such engines require a special fuel. They run on liquefied natural gas. If you cool natural gas to approximately minus 160 degrees Celsius, it turns into a liquid and becomes approximately 600 times denser. For its storage on board, 2 cryogenic tanks weighing 307 tons each are installed. They are so well insulated that the fuel maintains a liquid state even under the hot Caribbean sun. Interestingly, the tanks themselves were not manufactured in Finland. They were built at a shipyard in the German city of Rostock, loaded onto barges, and delivered across the Baltic Sea to the Meyer Turku shipyard. Moreover, the engine room, along with the generators, tanks, and fuel systems, was first completely assembled in Germany on a separate floating structure. Then, this module was towed to Finland and installed inside the hull like a huge pull-out block. As a result, one power plant was created simultaneously in 2 countries, and at the same time operates approximately 20% cleaner than regular marine fuel, producing practically no sulfur emissions. But the most interesting feature of these engines lies not in what they consume, but in what is usually considered waste. On the majority of ships, a huge amount of heat from the exhaust systems is simply lost. On the Icon, they decided to reuse it. Before the heat manages to dissipate, it is already participating in the production of drinking water, heating the pools, being used in the laundries, and helping to cook food in the kitchens several decks above. One energy source performs several tasks at once, without additional fuel consumption. The engineers did not stop at this. Food leftovers, packaging, and other waste that passengers throw away every day undergo special processing. In a hermetically sealed chamber, they are heated to a high temperature and break down into gas. Then, this gas is returned into the energy system of the ship. The technology is called microwave pyrolysis. Simply put, it is a generator working on garbage. Such a system has appeared for the first time on a marine vessel, where all equipment must function stably, even during pitching and rolling. The carbon remaining after processing turns into pellets and is later used as fertilizer. The engines, the heat reuse systems, and the waste processing are combined into a single electrical grid. Managing it is an around-the-clock task. The chief engineer monitors the entire system from a control center located deep inside the hull. If too much energy is directed to the air conditioning, the vessel will lose speed. If priority is given to the engines, the passengers will begin to feel the heat of the Caribbean climate. Therefore, the balance between comfort and movement has to be maintained every minute, and the majority of people on board do not even guess that such work is being conducted continuously. All this energy ultimately sets the vessel in motion. And here appears yet another unexpected feature. The Icon of the Seas does not have a traditional rudder. Instead of it, 3 Azipod units are used. Each represents an electric motor in a sealed capsule under the stern of the ship, directly connected to a propeller. There are no long shafts and complex gearboxes here. Each unit develops a power of about 20 megawatts and can rotate 360 degrees. Turn it to the left. The ship will go to the left. Turn it backward, it will begin to stop. It is exactly these systems that allow steering one of the largest passenger vessels in the world. But the capabilities of the ship are not limited to just the azipods. In the bow section are located another 5 thrusters, with a power of 4.8 megawatts each. Together, they allow the captain to perform maneuvers that seem impossible for a vessel of such dimensions. The ship can literally move sideways to the pier, like a passenger car in a parking lot. In many ports, tugboats are already practically not required. The captain is capable of independently bringing the liner to the pier, using a system that first appeared on Royal Caribbean vessels back in 1999. But on the Icon, it was scaled to dimensions that the first engineers could not even dream of. 3 azipods with a total power of 60 megawatts move almost 250,000 tons of steel with a precision more characteristic of an automobile than an ocean liner. But steering is far from the most difficult task. It is much harder to keep such a structure afloat. If one were to gather all the steel used during the construction of the ship into one solid block and throw it into the ocean, it would immediately go to the bottom. Steel is approximately 8 times denser than water. So why does the vessel remain on the surface? Because inside it is far from solid. Thousands of watertight compartments are filled with air. The cabins, corridors, engine rooms, technical spaces, and ballast tanks form a huge internal volume. The hull displaces more water than the ship itself weighs, and the displaced water creates a buoyant force. Archimedes discovered this principle more than 2,200 years ago. The engineers of Meyer Turku simply magnified it to the dimensions of a vessel longer than the Eiffel Tower. While the passengers gather on the decks for the sake of sunset photographs, the vessel is already engaged in adjusting its own balance. Every wave, every gust of wind, and every group of people simultaneously approaching one side alters the center of gravity. An error in calculations could lead to severe rolling. Therefore, dozens of ballast tanks constantly pump thousands of tons of seawater between various compartments. If several thousand people cross to the port side, the system begins to move water to the starboard side even before the list becomes noticeable. It takes into account fuel consumption, the water level in the pools, and even the distribution of passengers throughout the ship. To combat more serious rolling, active stabilizers are used. Underwater, huge fins emerge from the hull, resembling aviation wings. Their position is continuously changed by hydraulic actuators based on gyroscope data. Thousands of times per minute, the system calculates the parameters of the waves and creates a lifting force in the direction opposite to the rolling. In essence, the ship constantly counteracts the ocean in real time. Without these stabilizers, the upper decks would be extremely uncomfortable, even during moderate sea states. Thanks to them, the majority of passengers practically do not notice the movement of the waves. Even the bow section of the ship performs several functions at once. For the first time on a cruise vessel, a parabolic bow was used. Its shape differs from traditional designs and allows simultaneously making the movement smoother and reducing fuel consumption. Such a solution is beneficial, both to the engineers and to the owners of the company. But even the most modern technologies are not capable of canceling the laws of physics. At a full speed of about 22 knots, the ship requires more than 1 kilometer of distance to stop. Therefore, the captain begins to brake long before entering the port. It is impossible to stop a vessel of such dimensions instantly. However, movement and stability do not matter if the people on board cannot drink, eat, and receive medical assistance. 3 days after departing from Miami, the nearest hospital is at the distance of a helicopter flight. The nearest fire station does not exist at all, just like the nearest grocery store. Throughout the week, everything necessary for the lives of almost 10,000 people must be located inside the hull of the ship itself. The most important need of any person is water. Therefore, the desalination plants on board operate practically continuously. They provide drinking water, food preparation, showers, laundries, and the maintenance of pools throughout the entire ship. On a hot Caribbean day, the desalination system becomes one of the most heavily loaded on board. If the reverse osmosis membranes fail, emergency supplies are provided. No one wants to find themselves in a situation where fresh water runs out several days' journey from the shore. Water helps people to survive, but food helps them to remain satisfied. Every day on board, about 60,000 meals are prepared in more than 40 restaurants, cafes, and bars. During the passenger turnover, the crew has only 6 hours. In this time, more than 5,000 guests leave the ship and the exact same number of new ones board. Simultaneously, cargo teams deliver tons of vegetables, meat, seafood, dairy products, and other supplies through hidden service corridors. Every container has its place, and every refrigeration chamber operates on a strict schedule. The entire flow of provisions, equipment, and consumable materials passes through a system of corridors, of whose existence the majority of passengers will never know. Crew members call it Interstate 95. This hidden highway stretches from the bow to the stern and connects the kitchens, storerooms, laundries, and the living quarters of the staff. Along it, employees move on foot, on scooters, and on special carts, maneuvering around containers with provisions and equipment. While behind the wall, passengers stroll along the Royal Promenade and browse the shops, on the other side goes the continuous work of a huge logistical system. Along this route, it is possible to cross the entire ship without once ending up in a guest zone. But if provisions and water are constantly arriving on board, another task arises. What to do with the waste that almost 10,000 people produce daily? The Icon processes all wastewater, sewage, and solid waste directly on board. After purification, the water becomes so clean that in many cases, it surpasses the quality of water that some cities discharge into rivers. However, near coastlines and coral reefs, even stricter rules apply. In such areas, any discharge is prohibited. Therefore, even the purified water remains on board until exiting the protected zone. Some problems can be foreseen in advance. Others arise suddenly. Therefore, under the passenger decks, a fully fledged hospital operates around the clock. Here, there are intensive care wards, an operating room, X-ray equipment, and its own pharmacy. The medical team is ready to react to heart attacks, fractures, allergic reactions, and outbreaks of norovirus, which on a ship of such size are capable of spreading very quickly. Doctors and nurses undergo training in various fields of medicine because there may remain several days of travel to the nearest port. On board, there are even special rooms for the isolation of troublemakers. But there exists a scenario that the crew fears much more strongly than any conflicts between passengers. That is a fire. In the middle of the ocean, it is impossible to count on quick help from the shore. Therefore, the ship has its own firefighting team. The hull is divided into separate fireproof zones, and massive airtight doors close automatically upon the detection of smoke or high temperature. Each such system is designed to localize the problem even before it becomes a serious threat. As a result, a ship appeared where a huge steel sphere simultaneously performs the role of a load-bearing structure and the largest kinetic sculpture in the world, where the heat of the engines warms the pools, where waste turns into electricity, where thousands of passengers spend an entire week at sea and at the same time rarely run into one another. The best engineering solutions usually remain unnoticed, but it is exactly in this that the success of the entire system lies. The passengers see only the result of its work. The Icon of the Seas is capable of simultaneously transporting almost 10,000 people. But there exists another vessel, which in one voyage moves cargo worth $10 billion and uses an engine so enormous that it has to be built right inside the ship. But that is already a completely different story. Until we meet again.